What has the response been to your coaching method?
Response has been good. Although I was a bit worried initially because I've been working with individuals. They've responded well, had changes in their game, and people who play golf with them have noticed it. So they ask, well, what does Richard say? What does he say? And they don't really know what to say because I do not give one specific tip. But something is coming through. So in desperation, one golfer that I've worked with said, you know, he's kind of like a horse whisperer. There's no specific words he's using. There's no specific tip. And actually I take that as a compliment. Mm-hmm. Because sports is wordless. Sports is beyond words. And it's beyond thinking. And
it's almost mystical is what you're describing.
Well, mystical, it's mysterious, I guess you could say, and it's not something, it's tapping into a different part of ourselves, which is nonverbal, non-logical, and has more to do with sensation and feel.
And I think as a jazz pianist, it gives you more of a background and experience to make that transition to golf.
Absolutely, because another important element of playing music, and especially jazz, well, I think any kind of music, if there's no feel, I don't care how technically accomplished a person is, if there's no feel, then the music is not as successful. There has to be feeling and emotion in music. And it does relate to golf and sports, where feel is crucial. There was a very interesting article in Golf Digest a couple of months ago by Arnold Palmer entitled simply Feel. That's what it was. It was a short article, but he was talking about the lengths to which he and his colleagues went to try to capture feel and their worry about losing feel. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that is focused on typically, and that is a focus of my work.
Now, your co-author, Michael Hebron, have you changed his philosophy through his philosophy or approach to golf through yours?
I don't think I have changed his philosophy per se. It's very strong, it's very definitive, but I've been able to contribute something more from the psychological side of things. One of my expertise is relationships. Mm-hmm. And a golfer relationship is much like a doctor-patient relationship. And those kind of relationships are very charged. Mm-hmm. And I'm able to speak to him about some of the nuances of that relationship. And that relationship is key, obviously, to a successful outcome.
Yeah, I could just imagine you working with John Daly, the golfer who's had a lot of personal problems. And it affected his game.
Sure.
So basically whatever happens in the rest of our life kind of comes through in our golf game.
I believe so. Everything we do is really a reflection of who we are. And we talk a certain way, we walk a certain way, and we swing a certain way, and we play golf a certain way. So I believe if you're going to alter your game, if you're going to shift your game, change your game, you have to go through yourself. You cannot, the swing is not some isolated movement. It is very much related to who you are.
Now, you're teaching a workshop in Infinity.
Yes.
What, I'm sure you're going to be teaching us what we're talking about more in depth. Can you talk a little bit about your workshop?
Well, the workshop is somewhat improvisational. I like doing that. Depending on what the group is all about, I will go in certain directions. But one of the things that I'm using is music as a way of demonstrating, pointing the way to certain ideas that I have. Words are not as powerful, in my opinion, as music. Mm-hmm. So I try to intersperse music into the work. I also focus on body movement. Mm-hmm. One of the the disciplines, if you will, that I've been involved in has been Feldenkrais.
Oh, sure. I'm very familiar with Moshe Feldenkrais's work.
Which is just an elegant system and very powerful. So I don't do it in a systematic way, but I am making use of that in my workshop in some way.
Yeah, he called his work awareness through movement.
Awareness through movement.
Yeah.
And awareness is really the key, not the key, but it's very important in terms of sports and golf. So a lot of the work that I do is helping a person become more aware of what's going on internally, more aware of their feels, if you will.
Yeah. Now, let's say somebody has an injured back from golfing. Is it because they haven't been feeling the muscles and the spine properly, or they need to connect to that part of the body?
I don't know if I could make any generalization about that.
Understandable.
You know, that's getting a bit afield of my...
Well, to me, if there's a pain in the body, it's the body's way of saying you've got to change things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's for sure.
All right. So are you describing the differences between a mechanical approach versus one that focuses on feel?
Yes.
Okay.
I am. Again, feel is what sports is all about. And to be more specific...
Is it what life about?
Well, it depends who you talk to.
Yeah.
You know, some people are governed more by logic, and they're very interested in that. I tend to be more on the feel side of things. But the way I connect that is focusing on the sensory element in sports. If sports is nothing else, it is a sensory experience. Mm-hmm. And that is what makes it pleasurable. And so popular. Because what are the most pleasurable experiences in life, I'm talking about in-the-moment experiences, are sensory and sensual. And in order to play sports, we are using all of our senses, a number of our senses to play. And that's what I want to try to tap into, is the sensory element. And that, I think, is a distinguishing aspect of my approach and our approach.
Yeah, well, I could, you know, we talked about the sense of feel being important, sense of sight, you know, maybe lining up a putt or lining up a shot. But I also think the sense of sound, let's say like when you watch golf on TV, when you hear the driver, it's like, whew, makes like an incredible sound. Can you know, we talked about the importance of, you know, the feel when you listen to music. Mm-hmm. Talk about like the sound of like when the club hits the ball. Sure.
Well, one of the things I do, I see people both on a course and in my office doing more psychological things in the office per se. But when I go onto the golf course or a driving range, one of the things that I do is I'll have someone hit, and I'll ask them about the sound of it. Mm-hmm. And if they can start making some distinctions, I'll say turn around, and I will hit, and I'll ask them to tell me, was that a solid hit or is it not a solid hit? See, things like that. So I'm trying to attune them to their senses.
And so they would use the information from the senses, the sound of the club hitting the golf ball, as feedback to make corrections?
You could use that.
Or set a goal, you know, to have a certain sound when the
I'm
ball...
looking for a sound. Now, that's not typically what is done, right?
I've never heard that before, but to me that would be so Feldenkrais.
Michael told me about, there's a golf pro by the name of Jeff Ogilvy, very excellent player, and he goes onto a driving range and he's just looking for a sound. He's just looking for the sound, which is, I think, a very cool way of approaching it.
So how do you coach feel?
Yeah. How do you coach feel?
That's like, how do you coach life?
That's a good question. How do you coach feel? First of all, one of the ways is you make it explicit that this is the primary goal. So that's already taken in a certain direction. And again, how do you coach feel? You're basically coaching senses, the sensory aspect of things. That shouldn't be so difficult because we're ready to go in terms of our senses. We come into this world fully equipped to adapt to the world through our senses.
Yeah.
And